Morning, this is Brian. Today is Wednesday, July 10th, 2024, and I'm here along Father Junipero Serra Road, Mission Trails Regional Park, and it's time for a Spotlight on Shrubs video. Today's video is going to focus on this really nice small shrub here, and this is Heartleaf Beardtongue, Keckiella cordifolia. Keckiella cordifolia is a small to medium size drought-deciduous shrub and is a member of the Plantain Family, the Plantaginaceae. And there are quite a few specimens along here, so bear with me. So this is yet another Keckiella species that I'm going to be getting a spotlight video finally in the making today. So Heartleaf Beardtongue, Heartleaf penstemon, Heartleaf Keckiella, three of the probably more common names of this plant, is known for its sometimes, not always, but sometimes heart-shaped leaves. And that's where the name cordifolia comes from in Latin. Cord for heart and folia for leaf. So as you see here, the leaves are somewhat heart-shaped. As you can see here, they're kind of broad below the middle and then they taper off to a point. And a lot of times there's a little cleft where the leaf stalk or petiole comes in. Now sometimes the leaves look more heart-shaped than other leaves. Some leaves look more narrow and more rounded. It depends, but a lot of times they'll have a little cleft there, as you can see. Kind of gives it a roughly heart shape a lot of the times. This one's a little bit less so here. But you'll notice that we're in July, so the leaves are turning brown and yellow and falling off. That's fairly typical. But there's another reason why I'm doing it this time of year, is because this is the time of year when they're blooming. So I will be getting into some footage of that fairly soon as I shoot this video. So, Keckiella cordifolia is known for having relatively brown twigs, brown stems and branches that are relatively smooth, and also, if you may have noticed, the opposite arrangement of the foliage and the branches. So the leaves are oppositely arranged here on Keckiella cordifolia. As you can see here, the leaves are opposite one another on the stem. Pretty typical. Here's a larger patch of it. Sometimes these can get kind of tall. They're not strongly woody. They're pretty faintly woody, weakly woody plants. As you see, here's a patch of it right up here underneath these oaks and sumacs. You can see some of it right here. And you can see here, this one is starting to lose a lot of its leaves for the summer dry season. Again, very typical for quite a few of our beardtongues here in Southern California. So this is typically a lower elevation species, typically found below 4,000 feet. I haven't seen it super high up in the mountains, but I've seen it mostly here from coast to the lower mountain slopes. And it can be locally common, depends. But it is a plant that often blooms when it's shedding its leaves in the summertime. And it seems to be a hummingbird plant. I saw a hummingbird over here getting at some of the flowers, which I'll be getting a much more close-up detail very soon on the flowers of this plant. So bear with me. But it is a plant that typically grows in very tall chaparral and woodland. So it likes to be typically on shady or north-facing slopes, and is an understory shrub. As you can see here, we got coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia, variety agrifolia. We got heteromelies arbutifolia, the toyon. It's very much at home on north-facing slopes in the shade of woodlands. So now I'm going to go ahead and get a couple pictures of the leaves, and I'm going to move on to get you some flower footage of this plant. Okay, so here are a couple of blooms. This is what the flower bud looks like before opening. You see it's kind of narrow, and then you get this narrow corolla that opens up. It's definitely more amenable to hummingbirds who do like to pollinate these plants. So you can see it's pretty typical for a penstemon. You get the well, sorry about that, the narrow upper lip, and you get some broader parts here on the lower lip of the corolla, which is pretty typical in Plantaginaceae, especially with penstemon and Keckiella species. So I'm going to go over to some plants that have more blossoms on them. As you can see, those ones kind of had more of an orangish color, but they can also get a pretty rich red color as well. So I'm going to go migrate to some more of those so I can get some good footage of those for you. So there we go. Here's one that's got more blossoms on it. So here we are. Definitely a sight to see here as we move into the summer months. And we got one above us that's blooming as well. These ones tend to be a little bit more orange, but they can get a nice red color as well. So you can see, once again, very similar to penstemon. Keckiella is a close relative of the genus penstemon. So you can see the flowers are lipped. It's a little bit narrower on top. The bottom of the corolla is a little broader. So quite a handsome species of plant found here. Anywhere again from coastal sage scrub, chaparral, and woodland. Again, more on these north-facing slopes. This is where you're going to find this plant more frequently. So this will probably make a pretty good garden plant if you have a way to have an overstory to keep them protected from the worst, most desiccating effects of the sun. Just be aware it will shed several to all of its leaves and look kind of spindly and unsightly, maybe to some people unsightly during the dry season. But again, plants here are on seasonal cycles due to the nature of the climate. So we get some more growing here on the hillside again. You can see here some more monkey flower here. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to one of my other plant sightings so I can show you a little bit more of what the fruit on Keckiella cordifolia looks like. Well, here's another specimen here. Going on this very steep slope here. Alright, so here we got another Heartleaf Beardtongue right here, growing in this integrifolia lemonade berry. So this one's starting to develop its seed capsules. So the seed capsules are kind of roughly teardrop shaped when they start off. You can see here, they're green, so they're not quite ripe yet. And eventually they'll dry up and then will split open. So this is what they look like as they're developing. What I want to do is find the plant I started my spotlight video with, which I started spotlighting it so I can show you what the capsules look like when they're open. But yes, you can see here roughly teardrop shaped capsules. They're going to split open to shed the small seeds inside. So let's see if I can find any over here that might have some split open seed capsules. But first, let's get a picture too of what the seed capsules look like as they're developing. Okay, so this is what the seed capsules look like after they have dehisced. In other words, dried up and split open. Light brown color, four-chambered. Don't typically split open very widely when the seed capsule's open, but then the little seeds will come out and sprinkle all over the understory. But yes, they are four-chambered, but they look like they're two-chambered because the two lateral chambers are really close together, and then there's a split in between the two sets of chambers. So it is four-chambered, but they look like they're splitting as two-chambered. So that's Keckiella cordifolia right there. As for a more formal range of this plant, I will put that on the screen, but it can be quite widespread here in Southern California in these beautiful wooded areas. Especially love coast live oak woodlands, but they also grow, again, in chaparral, where the chaparral is very tall, and sometimes even in sumac toyon groves. In other words, lemonade berry, laurel sumac, and toyon, which is technically considered a subsect of coastal sage scrub, so this does occur in coastal sage scrub as well, but typically in very tall, statured forms thereof. So I'm going to get a couple more pictures of this plant and then get a couple final thoughts before ending this video. So yes, Keckiella cordifolia, Heartleaf Beardtongue, Heartleaf penstemon, Heartleaf Keckiella, whatever you want to call it. It's a pretty cool flowering plant. Nice little treat to find in the summertime when the flowers are open. Even as the leaves are drying up and falling off, you get a little taste of that beautiful flower. So yes, it's very typical. Another note about the flowers, as you notice here, the bottom of the lip of the corolla tends to be three-lobed, as you see where my thumb is kind of twiddling. So it's pretty typical. So it's one lobed on the top and three-lobed on the bottom. So that's another detail of the flower. There's a lot of beard tongues, Keckiellas and penstemons, tend to have three lobes at the bottom of the corolla. That's another trait I figured I need to mention. So, as I told you, they love to grow in the understory of shrubs. They also like to grow up in and through the shrub. So these can be a very sprawling type plant. If you look here, we're right here in the middle of a lemonade berry or lemonade sumac right here, Rus integrifolia, one of the common shrubs with which Heartleaf Beardtongue grows. So you can see here, these shrubs love to clamber. They're very lanky shrubs. You can see right here, you can see the gray, slightly furrowed bark on the older stems of the Heartleaf Beardtongue. I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. Gray and lightly furrowed lower stems. These plants also love to grow up and through the other larger woodier shrubs. So a lot of times Keckiella cordifolia will grow up and through other shrubs as well. So it looks like it's more upright than it normally would be, as it likes to clamber through the branches and twigs of the larger woodier shrubs. But as you saw in some of my other clips, once they are growing on their own, when they're growing on their own and they're not supported by the other shrubs, they tend to sprawl and arch, which is pretty typical for Keckiella cordifolia. So I'm going to come up on a couple less supported specimens right over here across the road. Again, you notice that these ones are not sprawling, or clambering, I should say. They're not clambering in the nearby shrubs. You can see the branches kind of arch, is because the reason why they're arched so much is because the ends of the branches where the flowers, flower buds, and seed capsules are quite heavy. And these plants are they're relatively limber until they're too heavy for their own good. Then they can easily break. But you can see the weight weighs them down, and that's why they kind of have an arched look, as you can see here. Because as you notice here, it's a very thin stems, very thin, brittle stems. This one's still relatively herbaceous, so this one probably won't be quite as brittle. When they harden off late summer and in fall, they'd be more likely to break. But as you can see, the arching is because of the weight of the flowers and seed capsules of the plant. So there you have it. Heartleaf Beardtongue, Keckiella cordifolia. Once again, a three-lobed corolla. As you see here, three-lobed bottom of the corolla, or should I say the three-lobed lip. The three-lobed lip of the corolla. Well, that's going to basically do it for this spotlight video. Keckiella cordifolia, Heartleaf Beardtongue. Hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully it was helpful in helping you identify more awesome species here in Southern California. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on another spotlight.